Welcome to Vectorworks 2B, Lesson 4A. In this lesson we'll discuss presentation styles, how to take your drawing from the 3D design layers and presenting it onto a sheet layer of a fixed size. I'm your guest lecturer, James Russell. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be using the Lego project that we built at the end of lesson 3 to show off some of the things that you can do to present your objects or designs onto paper, taking them from the 3D world here, which is an infinite space, and actually putting them on a page. Firstly, we want to talk about layers, because layers are really important in deciding on what you're going to actually take across from this 3D world and placing it into the real world. Now here I've got a couple of things. I'm currently showing this in a rendered mode. This is it here in a more complicated wireframe mode. What you can see is that I've separated these objects out here into some handy layers for myself, and this here is the layer drop down box for those of you who don't know it or aren't really familiar with it. And what I've done, you can see here I'm on the hanger at the moment, and I've got all these bits here on the hanger menu, and if I drop this down and go to the plane, all of a sudden I can't select things in the hanger here, but I can select my plane that I've built. You'll also notice these bits here. Now what I want to do is put these bits on another layer so that I can hide them later on, but I actually might need them at some stage later in the project. So if I go back to my hanger menu where these objects currently are, you can see I can select them now, whereas I couldn't before. I'm going to click here, and this is my organization button, and this will bring up the organization panel. And what you see here is that I've currently got two layers under the design layers tab. Two layers here, they're both fully visible here. Got some names, some scales, that kind of thing. What I'm going to do is hit the new layers button here. I'm going to call this one extra blocks. Lovely. Yeah, you can check this box if you like. I'm going to check it now just to show you what happens. If you click OK, it'll bring up this, and this is what you would normally get. I'll just close it if you double clicked on any of these items or hit the edit button down here. Once you've done that, you can see all of the fields that are shown across here are also displayed vertically here. So scale 1:1, as I was saying in our original lesson and trying to encourage you all along, you do want to leave your scale at 1:1 pretty much all the time. There is no reason why in a design layer you would need to scale something other than 1:1. It just gets confusing. The stacking order here, it might be important in this situation, but it's kind of up to you. I might give this a stacking order of 3, and that means it's going to move down the list, because in component wise I actually want it to be lower than my hanger because it's less important. The plane or the hanger, it's kind of up to you in this particular scenario which one would be on top. Obviously if you're looking at a top plan view, the hanger is going to be before the plane, but in terms of importance of components, for me the plane is actually more important, so it's a fine line there. As I was saying in the start of this lesson series, the story element is new to Vectorworks 2012. Basically that's if you're working on a building that has more than one stories, which I doubt many of you ever will. But you can automatically select a story, and that will automatically fill in things like your elevation, particular wall heights, and the level data, obviously. Opacity, is it see-through or is it not see-through? And if you choose to have a RenderWorks background, should you have RenderWorks installed, you can select one of these, such as the HDRI packages, which essentially put maybe a curvy daytime scene or a night or an evening starlight in the background, only when you render it in one of the full RenderWorks options. A couple of other things here, you can put some viewports on and colors and stuff like that, but we're going to do all that manually later on. So just hit the OK button. Yes, we did know that. And I'm going to click OK, and what you'll see is that this is flicked a little bit. We've got extra blocks here as our current layer, but nothing's selectable, nothing here. I can't grab onto any of these blocks here. So what I'm going to do is jump back here to the hanger menu where all these blocks are currently located. I'm just going to select them all. And from this drop down menu over here under the object info panel, you can see it says layer hanger at the moment. Now I can just swap this over to extra blocks. Obviously I could cut and paste them if I wanted, I could click and drag them through, I could right click on them and choose a layer, but this is the easiest thing, is just to drop down this thing where it says layers and choose extra blocks, and you'll see they flash for a second and all of a sudden they're on that other layer there. If you're ever unsure on what a particular component, which layer it might be on, you can right click on it, and there's an option here called force select, and what that does is it takes you to whatever layer and class in this case that particular item is on. So if I click force select, you'll see it tells me that they're on extra blocks, takes me there, and it'll select here, and these are all selected because they were the last things we put on this layer. So there you go. Obviously if I try this here and I click on one of these blocks and go force select, it should take me to the hanger. There we go. Something that we haven't yet talked about in any of our classes is the theory of classes. And classes essentially are like a series of defaults that you can use if you're drafting larger scale projects. Let's say for example that, and I'm just going to jump back into a top plan view here of my drawing. I'm on the hanger at the moment, but I might make a new layer just to demonstrate this. Just anywhere there. Now what classes enable you to do is choose a default, in this case attribute set, for a particular set of stuff that you're drafting. So for an example, if you were drawing a lighting plan and you wanted all of the lighting components to be in red, but you were also drawing a set plan and you wanted all of the set components to automatically be in green. So what we can do up here in our classes menu, and you can click here, this little button here that says classes, and it will take you straight to the organization panel. Notice it's just taken us to the tab called classes. So all these buttons here, this one here, this one here, and this one here, they all relate to this stuff up here. Obviously you can just jump across anytime you like. Now you'll always start off with two basic classes here, dimension and none, and most of the time you'll just draw in none. None will be your standard, and that's all well and good. Let's just make a new example one here. I'm going to call this set, and I'm also going to make a new one, and let's call this LX, just for the purposes of this exercise. Now what I might want to do is make my pen color of LX, so I can double click on this here, choose my pen color, and I'll make that red. There we go. And all my set components, I want them to be in green. Let me just find a green here. There we go. So now you can see that I've altered these, and we could have altered anything. We could have altered our line weight or our opacity of anything that we draw, but that's pretty good. Our default is still on none though. So notice now the attributes are the same. If I start drawing a rectangle, my rectangle looks exactly the same as what we've had always for the last forever. But if I swap this now to LX and choose color by class instead, you can see it automatically picks up the red pen color here. So all these objects that I start drawing automatically have a red pen color by default. Now this is good, but the moment that I change the set here, and I've still got this object selected so it's telling me it's red, but the moment that I click off that object, it's got the default color of the green here. So now I'll start drawing some set components, maybe some rostra, and they've all got the green pen color on them. Now why is this handy? Apart from obviously being a quick way of drawing and separating components with their colors and fills and things, it also means you can do quick changes to all full elements. So all of a sudden, I don't like the red pen color for my LX, I instead want it to be orange. So I can simply go in here, and that was just me clicking on here, under the organization choosing classes and double clicking on my LX, and I might all of a sudden change this to an orange. Click OK, and you'll notice all of these have automatically changed to orange. So this could be really good if you wanted to say have a wood texture across a whole variety of elements, and they've all got the same wood fill in here, or they've all got the same render in here, because rendering can also be covered here as a use texture right here on walls, roof and other components. But if you're using all of those and all of a sudden you don't like the wood texture that's across all of the elements in your drawing, you can change them automatically. The other great thing about this obviously is not only can you have the breakdown of layers here, but you can also turn on and off visibilities of classes. So they're like a smaller subdivision of layers. Even though on here, for example, you might have the lighting rig and you might also have the floor LX, but on some of those you might also have components of rigging, truss, some set LX, all that kind of stuff. You can separate those components down, so even though this here might say roof LX, inside your classes you could have a breakdown of truss, bars, LX, lighting components, all that kind of stuff, and turn them on and off while still having the major layer as a universal on or off. So now it's time for the big leap from here, the infinite space that we've been quite used to for the last 4 or 5 lessons, and jumping into something a little bit more restrictive. What I'm going to do is go up here to the layers menu, and I'm going to jump from design layers and jump over here to sheet layers. So I'm going to click on this, and we currently don't have any. I'm going to create a new layer, and this is where most people start to go off the rails a little bit in how this all works. 2 fields here that are important. The first one is the sheet number. Now, lots of people have different numbering techniques, and it can be anything from, say, 001 as the starting sheet number. You might like to do like a 00-01. You might like to do a 0000. I know for me, I normally do SL, and then I'll do some sort of category number. So, for example, my primary sheets will be 00 for information, 01 for set, 02 for lighting. And then I'll put in a dash and do what the breakdown of that is. So for example, if I'm doing the set layer, so that's 01 for me, and then I'll normally do a dash and I'll do the first sheet in the set layer. Say then I've got some working drawings, they might be -2. Then I might have another breakdown, it might be 03. And then if I'm moving on to the LX, I'll do 02-01 again, and that might be my total overview of LX. Finding a system that works for you, and the sheet number is primarily the thing that will be organized here. You can see it's automatically done by that. You can turn it on to sheet title, but by default sheet number will be the organization. So finding a method that works in there for you is often handy. You might also like a couple of the other things I've seen is a 001.01 system like that. There's a whole variety of things. So I'm going to use my SL system, and this is going to be our set layer, and this is our first drawing. Sheet title, although some people think it's kind of not really required, it is really handy because it'll allow you to autofill most of your title blocks should you be using a smart title block. So in this case, I'm going to call this the overview. It doesn't really matter in this example scenario, but obviously you can choose LX plan, you might choose technical drawing 01, anything like that. You can import some standards here. I'm not going to do that in this instance, and I want to edit the properties after creation, so I'm going to check this box and hit OK. Now this just comes up, and it's very similar to what we just had. DPI is an important thing to know, and it stands for dots per inch, and that's a printing resolution. And essentially what it means is how detailed, when you print this, does it have to be. When a printer is printing large amounts of data, the dots per inch is how many tiny dots of ink it will do within 1 inch. So 72, that's pretty standard. You'll find that on anything that you print, for example, from Microsoft Word, basic fonts, all that kind of thing. 150 is the next number that you'll primarily see, and that's normally for drawings, some basic kind of photo stuff. Photos are normally printed somewhere around the 300 DPI mark. The ones that you get from, say, your Coles or something like that printed out will be somewhere from 300 right up to about 600, and then after that you start getting into ludicrous printing techniques. Most plotters though won't go above 150, and if you are noticing that your file size is rather large when you make a PDF or a printout of your final drawing, often you might have to drop it back down to 72. Origin, probably just leave it as 00, just means it's in the center of the sheet. And this one here, the page setup. Now this is the big one. Clicking here on page setup, you get a couple of things. Now obviously we're showing the page boundary because we are working to a page now. You don't get an option to change that. This here is the second part where people always get stuck. Now you can either choose one printer page here, and if I have a plotter connected, if I happen to own a plotter at home or something like that, or I'm in the computer lab where the plotter's connected, you can choose one printer page, click printer setup. Now I've only got my little LaserJet here at home, which is an A4 one, but if I had a plotter I could find it in here, and it would automatically show that it's got an A1 paper size, all that kind of jazz, and that would be fine. Most of you though won't be connected to an A3 or an A1 printer all the time. So instead what you're going to have to do is check this box here, which is choose an unavailable size that you don't have. So if you check that box and drop this down, it's got all the default sizes here. Now this is the part where everyone gets stuck. I personally will always draft to an ISO A1, and if I'm going to do a small detail, sometimes I'll change it to A3, but most of the time it's ISO A1. You need to check the plotter that you're going to print to if you are doing the printing, and it's not at a factory where you can say this has to be A1. the ECA plotters are a different size to the standard. If they are, you can click the others option here and manually enter a width and a height. Now most of the time you'll find your maximum printing margins either written on the printer or in a user guide tucked in the side. Otherwise you might have to ask one of the senior lecturers around. Professional printing though, stick to this one here. I'm going to work with an A1 ISO right now. That's all good. The only thing that you really then have to change in here is portrait or landscape. Now I'm going to work in landscape. It's normally presentation wise a little bit better. So that's pretty good. Click OK. That's all excellent. Now what you will notice here, because I currently have my little LaserJet selected with its default printing size, the moment that I click OK, OK, OK again, there's my sheet, and OK, although it will be the size that I want it to be, which is that size there, it will most probably show, and I can't quite see it here, you might be able to see it, but it will actually break up that page. There's small white lines appearing on mine which show how many A4 sheets would actually fit inside that A1, and that's fine. They're not actually there, they're just a representation of your current capacity to print. So where to from here? Very good question. I'm quickly going to run through the tool set which relates directly to dimension and notes. It's down here, and some of you, if it helps, you can drop this down and view your tool sets as icons and text, which often helps me to remember which ones they are, because the pictures, they don't really say it all the time. I'm also going to just make this a little bit bigger, seeing as we don't need all that space. So I'm on dimensions and notes at the moment, and what you can notice is there's a whole heap of things here, which some of them we'll talk through now, some of them we'll talk through after we've made viewports. But the main one that I want to discuss is the sheet border here. One of the major changes from 2010 through to 2012 is the addition here of the VAA title block. Now some of you, I don't know if we can, oh yeah, we can get to it here. The old sheet border, which is fine if you want to use it, and if you do happen to have a copy of 2008 through 2010, the sheet border will work just fine. And you can still use it in this version. There is no wrong answer to be using this. All you do is double click on a page essentially. It'll give you this option to fit the page, which most of the time you want to do. Now if you just click OK at this point in time, it'll put that numbered border around the edge that most of you are probably familiar with. In this case I'm going to drop this down, and I'm going to, I'm going to actually click on this one here and choose the title block. And you can see there's all the basic title blocks. These might be ringing a bell from last time, say our Spotlight title block. Click OK and click OK. You can see it's placed a lovely little title block down there in the bottom corner. There we go. Now the thing you'll notice about this is it's slightly smart, and what it's done is put automatically our drawing number in, which is why I was saying the drawing number is sometimes important. So drawing number SL01 of, and then the total amount of sheets if you need to do that. And you can also see here it's given us the drawing title, and it's put overview in as our first sheet line there, which is kind of handy. It means that as you create new layers, these will automatically update. By double clicking on this, you get a whole heap of information here. The project values in this case apply to all the sheets. So things that are universal, the director's name, the production name, the venue that it's in, all these other things. Now they're applied to all title blocks here by default. Sheet stuff is only specific to this current sheet that you're working on. So things like the sheet number, the title stuff, some of the scaling, drawn by, and date, they're all specific to this sheet alone. So clicking OK on that will obviously edit any of the sheet stuff on here. So that's all well and good. There's a whole heap of options in here for the border, such as sizing of the border, what it's scaling to, the settings and things like that. Now just to run you through this as a few defaults, you'll often find that this is too big at A1. The actual size of the border is too big. It takes up a lot of the drawing. What I like to do is drop some of these down. Now often I will only keep my left and my top border. I'll get rid of my bottom entirely by typing 0 in here, and most of the time get rid of my right border. Sometimes I swap around and get rid of the left and keep the right. It's up to you really. And then I find that these are actually about twice the size they need to be, so I normally throw an 8 and an 8 in here, and that's about right. Some people like more vertical grid zones. You can round it out. I normally do about 10 and 15 or 10 and 16. And then the label size, it's also important. Sometimes you might want to make it bigger or smaller. 18's around the right size. Sometimes you might drop it back to a 12 or a 10. So that's pretty good. Clicking OK, you'll see that alters things here. It's changed our pattern significantly. I find that's a little bit better for me personally. You might want some more grid zones down the side to keep it in check, but that's pretty good. The scale factor here is essentially just how big this is. A scale factor of 2 in here should make it twice as large, and obviously if you do 0.5 you'll make it half the size that it was. That's handy. There's also the title block position here. You can select from right, top right, left, all that kind of jazz going on here, and the margin of it as well. Revision blocks if you need them. I don't know if this actually has, oh there we go, revision up the top here. You probably want that somewhere on the bottom, maybe in the left. Revision stuff we'll get to in a sec. There's actually a better revision module now. Inside that, things like hiding the border, filling the border, all that kind of jazz, the title block, revision data, issue data, all of that you can have a play with in your own time, and swapping title block, that's an option here as well. So that's the rundown on the sheet border. It's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing is you probably want to set up one of them, copy it, and then paste it onto any other sheets that you have, just to save you entering all this information multiple times. It gives you a basis for it. Obviously, as I said, the project stuff, you can just click OK and it'll apply it to all the sheets. But this individual stuff here, sometimes you copy it first and then go ahead. I'm going to get rid of this now, and I'm actually going to do a little swap here and bring in the VAA title block. And as I said, this is new to 2010, also 2011 and 2012, and it's really handy. VAA title block, I've just clicked twice here. You can see it's got a basic outline of the shape already. This is all the defaults. I'm just going to click OK because that's what I want to do, and you'll end up with something like that. Now the VAA title block is a smarter, more advanced version of the basic title block. That's what it is. If you are starting out on a project, it's just going to be a sketch, it's just going to be something that you might send away to one person. Just use the standard title block. If you're doing a full production set and you're really getting smart about your paperwork, use this. The VAA title block will be your friend. Now, it looks exactly the same. Double clicking on it, it's almost the same. Now, I've got a default one in here. I might edit my title block, which I can do here by choosing a base symbol, and you can see it's got a few standard ones in here. I'll talk about editing these a little bit later on, but maybe I'll choose one of the more advanced ones. This one here looks pretty good. See what happens when I click on that. I'm just going to scale that up as well so we can actually see it. There we go. Now a few of these fields are overrunning. We can talk about changing those next, but just straight off the bat I'm going to double click this, and you'll see it's a little bit more advanced than our previous one. There's a few things in here, so drawing info, project info, the revision and the issue journal, and I'll talk about those in a sec. But just drawing info, it's all about this sheet. So this is much like the sheet info or tab that was on the other one. You've got a whole heap of things here, the name of it auto-filled, the sheet number auto-filled as well, some things about the date here. You can automatically fill in a date here, which will just put today's date in. Automatically detects a scale if there's one present on the sheet. At the moment there isn't, so it's just done 1 to 100, that's fine. Notes field, the other fields. And then once again stuff about the project. So the project number, if you want to give it a number, it might be, I don't know, VCA 001 or something like that. The total amount of sheets inside there. The project name, the address, the client name. You can put a file name if there's one running down the side. Some of these title blocks have that as well, so you can check that as well if you want. And you can click this button here, which copies all of the updated info to all the title blocks. The revision journal and the issue journal are something that we probably haven't touched on in class really before, and revisions are essentially what changes you've made, and the issue is who you've given this drawing to. You mightn't start using them now, but particularly later on in your careers, it's really important to document what you've changed since the last issue and who you've given the issues to. So you can say, on this date I gave this to so and so. Now I'm just going to do a quick example here. I'm just going to click add, and I'm going to say number 1, so I gave the issue on this date and it was given by me, and I gave it to stage management. You can see it puts this little note here, and we can choose whether to use numbers or letters to auto increment them, whether they go up the sheet or down the sheet, that kind of thing. I'm also going to do a revision here, because revisions are the only thing that shows up in this title block in particular. So I might do a revision here, and let's say that on this date I started title block. Excellent. Click OK there. Once again, same things here, and you can check this box if you only want to show the last 4 revisions that are relevant. Hitting OK, you can see it's actually put here, and this has an inbuilt revision section here that issue A, I started the title block. It doesn't have my initials in here. Some of them will have the initials field, some of them won't. It just depends on which title block you've chosen. But that's pretty cool. The other great thing about this, after you've finished all of this, is that there's a new print menu. Now, we'll go through printing in quite a lot of detail after, but here under VAA Revise Issue Print, this is like the sledgehammer of printing. Clicking on this will bring up this dialog box here. And if I had a whole heap of other sheets, they would all appear here. So I can essentially check which ones I want to give out. I can enter a mass revision for these, so if I check all the LX layers, for example, I could say I've redone the entire lighting design in here. So I might do lighting design changes. Enter this revision for the marked sheets. Do you want to enter this, the automatic number, so it's going to be B, I guess, on this date by JR? Do you want to do that? Yes. Excellent. So that's been made to all the sheets that I had selected. Then I can create an issue note in here. So this issue here, I'm going to say that on this date, obviously I did it to stage management previously. Now I'm going to do it to everybody. Click on that. Do you want to do this? Do you want to give it to everybody? Yes, I do. There we go. Now you can batch print this out, you can batch PDF this out, and you can also reset manual dates. So if you want to backdate or future date your printing, you can do that as well. So there we go, that's pretty good. You simply click done here, or you click batch print mark sheets, either one, it's up to you. And you can create a transmittal. Now a transmittal document, essentially, and I'm going to create one now, transmittal by JR, that's me, transmittal sheet on a new layer, creator update now, and it'll make a little ping that it just made in my head. And that's all good. So I could obviously print this from here, I could print the PDF, I could print it out, and click done, and there we go. Now I've clicked done, and it's brought me to the transmittal sheet, and what you can see here is this is a great document. If someone goes, you didn't give me the printout, I didn't get it, you can see here that I actually gave out sheet 01 by James Russell. I did all that here, and you can do the distribution. If I had have distributed that to someone, I could put them in here and list out all this information. So I did revision B at size A1 on this date, there it is there, that's the date it was completed, and you can give this out to every single person, put their name inside here and say, right, all you people, you've got a copy of this now, that's it, I'm done. Hopefully if I go back here as well, you can see I'm just switching between, they're subdivided from our, down here the design layers, I'm just switching between the sheet layers. If I have a look also, that mass revision I did there of B has appeared here as lighting design changes. So it's really good to keep track of the updates that you might have done, all that kind of stuff. So that's very good. Now some of you have probably looked at this and you're asking, how do I make my own one of these? Because I really don't want that massive logo there. That's not my company. This isn't the way that I want my font to flow and things like that. So what we're going to do is just have a quick look at building your own one of these. From your window menu, go to palettes and make sure you've got your resource browser open. I don't have it at the moment. Here it is for me here. Now mine's defaulted to the hardscapes because that's one of the things that I was using last, but I'm going to go here, and this project for me is called Lego. So I'm going to drop that down. You can see that I've got a few things in here, even though I haven't really done this much at all in this document, I should say. So I've got the title block record, that's fine, just leave that there. I've got the transmittal page, and you can see if I wanted I could throw that on there. That's just a copy of the transmittal, and that's the thing that we discussed just previously. I'm going to get rid of that. You can also see here I've got a few new things. I've got sheet border components, and inside here that contains my previous title block that I used with my basic sheet border here. But I've also got, if I go here back up to the top level, another folder called VAA title block symbols. So what I'm going to do is jump into here, and I've just got to remember now which one of these I used. I used the VAA TB Vert 3. So here it is here, VAA TB Vert 3. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm just going to call this the JR version of that. So there we go. I'm going to right click on this, just make sure I've got it selected, right click on that and go edit, and it'll pop up and say, what do you want to edit? I want to edit the 2D component, because this is only a 2D thing, it's not 3D. Click edit, and it'll take me into this, okay? And essentially what's here, just try and ignore this text here, obviously you're going to have similar thing happening on your screen. Basically I've got all the fields here now laid out in front of me. So say for example this drawing number, it was slightly too large for us. So what I'm going to do is just change the font size of that down a notch, maybe a little bit more, somewhere there. This isn't my logo. Now all of the background, that's something I should discuss. All of these fields here, the ones where Vectorworks has smartly put them in for you, you can see them all. There they are there. They're all the ones that data gets entered into. Everything else that isn't something smart in this case, so something that you can't do when you double click on that little menu, is going to be in this background here. So you just double click on this and now you've got access to it here, but you don't have access to the previous stuff. Clicking this big orange button here will get you out of that. So for example, this logo here, this isn't my logo. My logo is actually a six-sided object here, a hexagon. That's what my logo looks like, and that's not my telephone data, so I'm going to get rid of that. So I've made a few changes there. There we go. And now I'm happy with that. That looks great for me. So I've changed the size of that, I've altered these. Exit the group. So that takes me back out here where I'm playing with all the things, the client name, the project address and all that. The revision data's up here as well. And then I'm going to exit the symbol. So that takes me away. I'm happy with that. Exit the symbol. So now you can see it's taken me back here, but none of the changes have happened. What I'm going to do is click on choose base symbol again. And if I drop this down, you can see now I've got VAA TBJR. And that's in my current content up here, as opposed to the default content. For this document, I've got a new one. If I click OK, there's my changes made. I've got my hexagon, my drawing number now fits inside there, all this telephone data is correct, but all of this stuff, the revision stuff, is still there. It's all still happening for me. There's one other thing about this which is really nice, and it's the stamp. It's shown here invisible, but what you can do, this is just a little nice kind of thing that you can do. It's not actually shown in here, it's shown in here. Edit drawing stamp text. This is really good because what it allows you to do, if you've only done a draft, for example, or a sketch, much used draft, I want a red, I want uppercase letters, and I want to click OK. Now what you can actually do is throw this draft symbol across a page. So if I go back in here to my resource browser and edit this JR again, 2D component, from now on I actually want my stamp text, which is the one shown here, to be at size 500, which is quite large. That's probably a little bit too large, let's be honest. Let's say 250, about half that size. And I always want it to be rotated across my page. And this is something that you might choose to set up over time, you might not, it's entirely up to you. So there we go, I've got a big stamp now across my page, and that's going to say whatever I want it to say inside there. If I exit the symbol now, there's my draft. Now it's automatically corrected itself here. If it had not, you can click on choose base symbol and click re-import the current symbol. But mine's updated, and that looks pretty good to me because I would know now that that's only going to be a draft copy. Whatever's under there is only a draft. Obviously you can add opacity and things like that and make it look really crafty, or change it or update it. Normally that would obviously live down here in the bottom corner as well, or stamped across your title block, or whatever you'd like really. So moving on from here, we're going to actually get into taking an object and putting it on this page. And this is one of the things that most people who start this course have the biggest trouble with, is getting something onto the page and then starting to draw over the top of it. I'm just going to get rid of this draft because it's actually quite large. In this case, I'm just going to put it on no stamp. So now we've got a blank page sitting there. I might even get rid of our title block for now. Okay, so that's my page that I'm working to. There we go, close my resource browser. So first things first, how do we actually get an object onto here at scale? What I'm going to do is jump back here. I'm going to jump onto my plane layer. It's going to have a little think because my plane is actually quite detailed. The second thing I want to do, and it just makes it easier if I isolate the components that I want, so I see them here as I want to see them on the page. So in this example here, I'm going to click on my layers panel, or my organization tab, get this open, and I'm going to turn off the design layer here and the extra blocks layers. So I want to get rid of these. I just want to see the hanger and my plane in this instance. So I'm going to click OK. These should disappear, and there we go. I've got my hanger and I've got my plane. So that's looking pretty good. That's almost exactly how I want it to be. And now Vectorworks is going to use a thing called a viewport, and a viewport is just like taking a photo of an object that's constantly updating. So it's as if I take a standard photo, except that photo has this magic ability to change whenever I change something that was in the photo. So from the View drop-down menu here, I'm going to go down to Create Viewport. There's also Create Section Viewport, which we'll talk about, but just for now, Create Viewport. This pops up this menu here, the viewport name. Now this is slightly important. It's mainly for identification purposes, so I'm going to call this Plan Plane. And the drawing title as well. This is important if you're using auto-updating, so I suggest using it. I'm going to call this Plan, Plan. There we go. Price is where we'd like to put it, so in this case I want to put it on SLO 101 because that's the only sheet I have, but if you were doing a lighting plot, throw it onto your lighting layer. If you're doing a set, etc, etc. Scale 1 to 1, I'll leave it as that for now. I can change it in the future. Mine's obviously going to be a little bit small, I think, for the page, so I might have to scale it up. For you guys who are doing a large theatre that you want to fit on a page, you're obviously going to have to scale it down. Now the numbers obviously go inverse from that, but that's the thinking behind it. It's already selected the view, which is a default for me on top plan. It's matching whatever I'm taking the current photo from. It's chosen the rendering mode that I'm on at the moment, and also the projection mode that I'm on at the moment, so that's all well and good. Click OK here, and what it'll do, it'll transport me across onto my page, probably after having a little think about it. And there we go. Now what I've got here is a viewport, and you'll notice that all the locking should still be there. I should still be able to snap to components inside here, but actually moving components, I can only move the whole object essentially. That's all I can move. And that's because this is just an image, a live image of that object. So that's pretty good. It fits on my page rather nicely. If I was doing a solo kind of page of this, I might think about scaling that up. So here in my scale, as opposed to these numbers, which as they get higher, the image gets smaller, I actually want a ×2 on this. And you can see that should boost my image after a little bit of thinking to be a larger size. For you guys, if you're drawing a theatre plan, you'll need to scale it down, so maybe a 1:4 will make it a quarter of the size that it was, and that's quite small for my page. I'm going to leave mine at a convenient 1:1, and there we go. I'm going to pop that over here in the top left hand corner, something like that. Now what I want to do is create a side view of that, and then we'll have a little experimentation with isometric and section views and talk about annotation. So first things first, how do I get a side view? I'm going to show you two ways of getting different views for this. The first way is that I could go back here to my plane design layer. It'll have a little think. I can look at that in my side view. For me, that's a front view because the plane's facing that way, but it doesn't really matter. We'll do this one first. So I'm looking at that in a front view. Once again, I just do the same process. View, create viewport. All these things here, I'm going to call this my front elevation dash plane. And I'm also going to copy all of that because I just want that one to be the same as well. All the details are the same. You can see it's automatically, it knows we're in the front view. Click OK. It's going to have a little think once again. Just copying my object across. Hopefully yours will be a little bit quicker than mine will be. It's also probably because I'm recording at the same time. And there we go. I've got once again one of these live updating viewports, and I'm going to grab this corner, probably by the bottom corner, and I'm going to line it up here. And then I'm just going to drag it down somewhere around here. And you can see that's a direct translation now of what I want. The last little bit that I want, I'm going to shift all of these over here, is I want to make an isometric and a front view so I can see how the plane actually fits inside the hanger that I've made for it. Now, there's a couple of ways I could do this. The thing that I'm going to do is copy one of these. So I'm just holding down my control key, or for you guys it's the Alt key. And I've moved this across, so I've essentially got two of this viewport here. From this active menu here, I can actually just choose to look at that from a left-hand view, which is what I want. And the moment I do that, it'll actually re-render this into a different view for me. So all your standard views are here. I might have to pop this out so you can see them all. But they're all in here, the right, the left isometric, all your lower isometrics, front, back, custom views, all that kind of jazz is inside here. So that's pretty good. I'm going to pop that back up here in the title block. Oh, that's not what we want. Lock into there. Go on. There we go. That's better. So now we've got those three, and they're looking pretty good together. They're looking alright. But I wouldn't mind having this one here as an actual section, so I could see the plane inside the hangar without all the stuff over the top, or at least without some of the stuff over the top. So we're going to make it section viewport now. There's two ways to make the section viewport. You can either do it on this layer here, on the design layer, or you can do it on the actual sheet layer themselves. The advantage of doing it on the sheet layer is that you'll get marker lines where you actually drew the section from. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going back here. It just takes my computer a little while to render this one up. What I'm going to do is click on this viewport here, and I'm going to choose from the view menu that I want to create a section viewport. And I get this little crosshair here, and I'm going to create a line essentially, and I want my line to run through here. This is in my example. And then essentially I've clicked once. You can do multiple clicks from out here, but effectively it's asking me which side do I actually want to look. So I want to look from here through that way. So that's just by raising my cursor or lowering my cursor either side of this line after I finish drawing. Click again. It's going to have a think. And there we go. So it's asked me something here. It's put a big 1 there, which is a bit excessive. That's okay. It's asked me to name this, so it's taken the viewport name by default in this case of 1/SLO101 or something like that. You can create the drawing label, you can do all of this, so it's drawing number 1, the drawing title is section front plane, for example. Scale the same, rendering hidden line, sure, sounds good. That's pretty good to me, so we're going to click OK and see what happens. My computer's going to have yet another think about doing this, and obviously this is quite an advanced model. Some of you might have this happening on your Mac, some of you might not. But there we go. I'm going to create a backup of my file, but you can see what it's done here is taken through this line looking this way. Anything that it's cut through, it's made red. And then it's taken everything inside and it's showing me a really clear picture of that, and that's actually really nice to me. You can see some of the blocks here it's had a little bit of intersection trouble with, but on a whole that's overall pretty good. Now this is a really good point to talk about annotation, because this one is way too big for me. Annotations are essentially notes or drawings that you place on a viewport, but they aren't actually related to the actual object. And once again, taking this back to the photo idea, it's as if you write the date on the back of a photo or something like that. It's not actually affecting the memory that the photo is capturing, it's just that instance that you have. So if you then print off another copy of it, or another copy from the original file footage that you've got of it, it's not going to have that annotation in this sense that you've written on the original photo. And this is the same idea. This marker line here that's automatically been put in by Vectorworks, it's only on this viewport here. If I copied this exact viewport, it would have that, but if I was to make a new one of the planned view again, it wouldn't have this marker line. So what I'm going to do, I can either right click on it and go edit annotations from here, or if I'm on a completely new system, I can double click on it and choose one of these options: edit the annotations, edit the crop, which we'll talk about next, or edit the direct design layers. So this is essentially going and dropping down this menu and choosing a design layer, so I could jump straight into one of these shown here. I want the annotations for now, and I'm just going to click OK. You can see what it's done here is it's re-rendered my page. It's taken these to grey where I can't touch them anymore, and it's also given me this, a full black outline of my current project that I'm working on, the current viewport that I'm inside, I should say. And now I can edit this data here. This is something that's been drawn over the top by Vectorworks. Now I here want to edit the text size on this, so I'm going to drop down my text menu and choose a more reasonable 10 and see how that looks. That's pretty good. I might boost that up to a 16 or an 18, I think, just to make it look a little bit prettier. 14, that sounds like a fair compromise to me. So you can see that's in there. Now just talking about this is just a section marker here. It's got a couple of different functions you can add in here. I'm just going to make that a bit bigger. So you can change the size of the marker, you can tell it to auto rotate, you can put text on both ends, so that's like the double ended one. You can show only the drawing number, you can show the drawing the sheet number, you can show the sheet title, all that kind of stuff, the rotation of the text, all that stuff, the automatic text filling if you want to do all of that, or you can set your own name and numbers. So that's all good inside there. Now also inside this, I'd like to put a few dimensions in on the overall size of this, and then I might detail up my plane in this separate one. from this menu over here, I've got a couple of options. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. I know my menus are starting to take up a lot of my screen. Two different types of dimensioning styles here, the unconstrained style and the constrained style. The constrained style, it's pretty straightforward. It'll only work left to right or up and down, so in the horizontal and vertical plane. So clicking once here, clicking a second time here, and then once again raising it up like most of the defaults. And you can see my text size is actually set by default at the moment to something quite large. So if I jump back in here, it's probably set to about 500, which is what I had it on before. I'll change it back to 12 as my default and try that again. One click, two clicks, raise it up. There we go. Now there's a whole heap of options up here. You can do back-to-back chain mode, which means you go click, 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 and then raise them all up. You can do one over the other mode. There's a whole heap of stuff here, and your standards inside here. You can read up about these, and they're also defined in your basic standards over there. But it's just essentially how the numbering works, what the tails look like. You know, do they have the slash through them? Are they bold on the ends? Are they all that kind of jazz? So you can edit all that. You can also click this button here, the pencil and spanner, which will take you into a more advanced version of essentially what these little buttons here do. So that's pretty good. But if I wanted to do a diagonal with this, it's not ideal. You'll notice I'll try and do a diagonal across here. If I do one click, two click, it actually only restrains me to doing a vertical or horizontal distance between those 2 points here and here. If I did want to do a diagonal, I would have to choose the unconstrained dimension, and this is point to point. This here is vertical horizontal, this here is direct point to point. You can see if I did need to do, for some random reason, this dimension here, I could take it like that. So hopefully that makes sense. There are a lot of options in here to do with dimensions, such as their offset, the witness lines, so that's these little guys on the ends. The text offset, so how far away from the line the actual text is, so I could increase that and you can see it jumps further away from the line. How precise it is, so in this case it's to 0.1, we might want to go even further than that, down to nano, it's up to you. Show dimension liters and trailers, so do you want millimeters on the end? That's a default preference that you can set later on, but things like that. All those options are there, and obviously if you need to change that to reduce it or increase it, you can change the length in here. So that's all very well and good. I'm going to come back to the annotations section and viewports and things in a sec, but I just want to talk about the biggest problem I see with students' works. I'm going to exit the viewport annotation by my orange button up here in the corner. It'll just take me a moment to get back to my regular page view due to this model. The biggest problem, and it's not going to work really well for me because all of these are one-to-one, so I'm just going to drag one of these out here and just shrink it up or shrink it down as you would with a regular plan. So I might make that ×3. Should be 3 times the size. The biggest problem that people do is that they go, okay, I've got my drawings here, they're looking really good, they're really great, I know how to use my dimension tool, I've just got to click here, I've just got to click here, raise it up, and that figure's great, I'm going to print off this plan now. This figure here is the real world scale, because you don't see an orange border. So that's the real size of that on the page, which is correct. In this case where it's 1:1, it's ironically correct. But in every other case, if this is 1:25, you've just measured something that's probably 4-6 meters as being 22 centimeters, which is incorrect. You really need to make sure that when you're putting dimensions down, you double click and go into annotations, or you right click and go into annotations, depending on how you're feeling. Because then when I place that inside here, and it's just going to have a little think about it for a sec, and I'm going to do it over the top of this one just so we're really clear. Raise that up a fraction. If I exit that now, you can see that they're two very different numbers. Come on, computer, catch up. That's it, have a little think. So you can see they're very different numbers because one of them is the actual measurement, one of it is the real world measurement as it's printed on the page. So just make sure that whenever you're doing annotations, you're inside the scale of that particular viewport. Just double click. If that's the one thing that you have to remember from now, because it'll be really awkward if you go and measure up a set and you've printed it out at 1:25 and someone brings back a model piece that's 1:25 and says this is the size that you asked for, You go, no, I really wanted it 25 times bigger, but I measured it wrong. So that's very well and good. I'm going to jump back into this drawing here just to show you a few more things. So I double clicked again, annotations, yes, I want to edit those. Here we are, look at that. So there's a few other things here we're just going to run through. The two other features that I really want you to start using if you can is this one here, the drawing label. And I'm going to talk about this now. The moment that you click the drawing label into a viewport that you've made, and if you've put the labels in, I don't know if you remember back when I made the viewport, I typed in that this is going to be the plain plan top view or whatever it was. If I place this in here, and click twice in this case, it'll automatically put that in. And it tells me that this is the plain plan, and at the moment it's scale of actual size because they're 1:1. So that's a smart dialog box. If I change the scale of this viewport, so if I exit this, I'll have a little think, obviously. Having a think. There we go. And if all of a sudden I change that from being 1:1 to 1:2, so it should get half the size of that, all my things here change, and you can see the scale is now half actual size. So it means that you don't even have to think about it. You've just put that in there, and all of a sudden it's doing all the work for you. It knows what's going on inside that drawing, which is really good. They're also really simple, and you see they're really quick to create. Just jumping back inside here so I can show you the modifiers that you can add to that. Inside here, there's a whole heap of stuff. So what is the drawing title? It's taken the default of what we set as the viewport. The drawing number. Now, just note you can't have the same drawing numbers. Because I made this one first and it's got a little default one that comes with it, that's been labeled number 1. This one here has been made number 2 just because it's in chronological order from this one here. Obviously I'd have to change this label here first if I wanted this to be number 1, or I could make it A, or I could make it, anything like that. Number style, drawing only or drawing in sheets, so this will put 2 SL01, whatever it was. Scale label, you can do that. You can just do it with numbers if you want. You can add a custom style in. I think that's pretty nice. Bubble, circle, rectangle. That's for this little area here. Just keeping on moving down, we've got the title text, the scale text, the drawing number text, the sheet number text, all that kind of stuff, how big the bubble is. This here, the line length mode, you can have it auto fit, which means whichever piece of text is longer out of these ones is how long that little line there is going to be. Also you can set it to a control point, which means you can actually grab this here and make it X amount of so many long, or you can type in an actual value with fixed mode. 130 takes us way over there somewhere. So yeah, all of that's really straightforward, very handy, very cute. They save a lot of time if you set them up right. I'm going to turn off, make that drawing only. The last little one that I'd really like you guys to start looking at is the callout tool, which is up here. And it's really good for just general notes. It's so simple to use. If I just give you an example here, click once, click on my plane for example, and my callout text is going to be, this is a plane made of Lego. Now it looks a little bit boring, I will admit that, but what you can do is start to jazz it up a little bit. So let's put a rounded rectangle on that. Let's left justify that text. Let's set a margin a little bit larger than that. That's probably a little bit too big. That's a bit better. And all of a sudden you can kind of see where this is going. Now it's already got a little arrow on the end of it. You can change that if you like. Excuse me. But all of a sudden this is really good for demonstrating what kind of textures, what kind of surfaces are on this, and you can do really big layouts just using this callout tool. There's a whole heap of other things in here. You can do your hexagon. There's also the cloud, which some people like for revisions. There's also the cloud tool in here if you want to say that this is a revised area. So if I've made a change, I can say this is the changed area inside here. A whole heap of things like that. So handy thing. I'd really get into the habit of using this. It can create a really professional drawing, just demonstrating, and give it the plan to someone and say, these are the wood surfaces made out of 70 by 19 fascia. This is a painted, scenic element. This is a cloth. This is a drape. This is a black curtain. This is a red curtain. All that kind of stuff. Just use these. Use them to demonstrate it. So hopefully you've got a really good grasp onto that now. There's a couple of things that I didn't discuss. Obviously the angular dimension stuff, it's all pretty straightforward. Just use it when you need to. I'm not going to spend time talking about it because if you can get these ones down, these ones here are really easy. So that's pretty good. I don't think there's anything else. I'll just have a quick squeeze. There's not a lot else. The scale bar might be the only other thing that you might use, and if you're feeling that, all you do is click on your page and throw it in there. Now the one thing to remember, and I've just done it wrongly here, but if you are doing that, it's best to do it inside an annotation. In this case, because the scale is 1:1, it's fine. But if this is a 1:25, just make sure you do a double click into your annotations and then throw in the scale bar from here, and you'll see the moment that I put it in. And you can do this anywhere. You don't have to associate it to the drawing. You can just pop it in here if you like. Especially obviously if it is close, and you can see at the moment this is quite small because the scale here is quite small, but I might actually want to change the sizes here. Can I go a little bit further than that? So that's in meters at the moment. You can change what the scale divider is. By clicking the little checkbox here, you can actually change between what it sees as a default meterage units to the current units of your selected unit drop down. So whatever you've got selected here in your document settings as your units, I think for me I'm in millimeters. If you decheck that box, it will make it into millimeters, and I obviously don't need that decimal point precision. You can change the style of it. So at the moment I'm zigzag. Some people like the box, some people like the checkered box, I think it is. You can do alternating colors and things like that. Minimum divisions. So it's a good thing. Just you can throw your scale ruler against it and go, yep, this is meant to be 150 mil. Scale everything up. Just make sure that your drawing is actually scaled correctly. That's all we're going to talk about in this tool set at the moment, because that's what you kind of need to progress forwards. We'll talk a little bit more about isometric viewports, and then we'll continue on with some more fun stuff. One thing you'll occasionally notice is this red border here, and it'll happen most frequently on section viewports, but it'll also happen on rendered viewports. And what it means essentially is that these here, they're pretty average for Vectorworks. It's like, yeah, whatever, I'll render those for you, that's cool. It goes, this is a little bit more complex. I'm going to leave this for now because I don't want to suck all of your computing power just working on something that you mightn't actually need right now. And what you want to do is leave all of these until the end, or until you need them, and then update them. And what that means is Vectorworks will go through and go, alright, I'll actually do the hard yards, I'll find out where that is, in this case this section marker here, and I'll re-render it for you if you've made a change. So what you can do is click on this, click update from this menu here, or if you've got a whole heap of them and you're about to print your whole set, you can use the view menu and update all viewports. It's the same thing for me because I've only got one at the moment. By clicking that, Vectorworks will have a little think about it. You can see down in the bottom right hand corner it did have a bar there saying rendering, and now you can see that's gone and that's acknowledged as a full rendered viewport. So that's pretty good. There are a few options in here that I didn't really discuss, but you can choose different background render, and there's also a whole heap of section stuff in here. Under the advanced properties here, you'll see you get this box here, and it's got a few options. The length range is the first one. As you can see, we drew our section marker from one far extreme to the other, so it doesn't really apply in this case, but had we only draw it halfway through or something like that, we could check the limited by section line length, which means our viewport would only be from this end here to this end here, and it wouldn't include all this stuff beyond that. Depth range is quite similar. How far from this line here backwards do you go? Infinite means you keep going into run out of objects pretty much. Finite, you might be able to set that you only want to be able to see from here through to here, for example, this midline here. And the height range, once again, obviously this isn't showing a 3D, but does it go up 1 story, does it go up 2 stories, does it only go up 500 mil, whatever you like. Attributes are shown in here, merge cross sections and separate cross sections. So in this example here, I know that I drew these as separate components here, they're actually different blocks, but when Vectorworks has cut through it, because these are all solid, it's done a solid addition all the way through here. Now what you can do is do separate cross sections, and I'll leave it on that when I click OK, and it actually breaks up anything that it's going through. It'll still show the marker lines for, essentially. And the display, there's just a few options in here, text colors and stuff like that, the resolution, all that jazz, and there are fill options here, which I forgot to mention. So clicking OK, it'll probably get a red border. It might update itself. It's going to give us a red border. Click Update over here. It'll have a little think about that, and showing individual cross sections is a little bit more complex, but you can see now it's done all the marker lines where I know I made my bricks just a little bit clearer. So that's pretty good. Now we're just going to discuss isometric as well. I'm going to replace this viewport here with my section viewport because I like that a little bit better. Mark a line there, mark a line there. There we go. Good-o. Now I may as well bring these a bit further into the center. That's looking pretty good for now. What I'm going to do is copy this once more, and I'll probably do this two ways just to show you, but this is the first way. I could obviously go in here, choose from my view a right, what do we got, right isometric. We'll see what that looks like. It'll have a moment to think, and then try and render that out. Now I don't quite like that. I'm going to do the right rear isometric and see if that gets me inside the hanger. No. Now I'm having to muck around quite a bit. This isn't really the view that I'm looking for. It doesn't demonstrate very much for me. So what I'm actually going to do is delete this one here. And I'm going to jump back onto my original layer here. I'm going to jump on the plane layer so I can get the exact view that I want to represent this. So I'm going to grab my flyover tool and I'm going to fly around this until I find a view that I really like. And I think that's pretty good somewhere there. Zooming in, I'm just going to have a look. It might need a little angle adjustment, something like that. But on a whole, that's pretty good for me. And I'm also going to render this now. So I'm going to do my Control-Shift-G, have a look at it in OpenGL. That's looking pretty good. You can see I might want to do some fine tuning. I actually put some glass in there just to be a little bit tricky as like a little window. But I want to see that end tail piece there. And I do want to see the rest of that. Let's just say I'm happy with that. Which I pretty much am. I'm actually going to do a full render on that one as well, just to have a look at how it might look if I do a final quality over the top. It's probably not going to be too different. The glass might be a little bit different. You can see it's taking a very long time to think about it. There's not a great amount of change, so I'm probably just going to leave it as OpenGL because it'll be quicker for me. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing, View, Create Viewport. And from here, this is going to be my isometric. Apologies. And I'm just going to copy that in here. I'm going to put in plane as well. It's going to be on the same thing, one-to-one, all that jazz. You can see it's picked up a custom view, so we can't. This isn't replicated by a left isometric, right isometric, or any of that. And it's also knowing that we're in OpenGL by default on this one. Click OK. It'll have a little think about bringing that across onto my page for me. Having a think. And there we go. Now you can see once again it's given me this as a basic line drawing. It is taking up quite a lot of memory thinking about this one. I'm going to plonk it somewhere there, and it's got the red border indicating this is the best I can do. If you want something better, let me know and I'll do it. So I do want that. I'm going to click Update. It's once again going to have a little think, and there we go. So we've got that rendered out version of it there. Now my layout isn't quite right here. I wouldn't be really happy with it, but for this example it's pretty good. Same things apply. You can still throw stuff over the top of this. One of the things we might quickly talk about, I'll see where I can do it on one of these. We'll just quickly talk about cropping. So if we want to crop a viewport, cropping is essentially cutting a piece out of it. It's going to be quite rough because I don't actually have something I don't really want on here, but if I was to do it on this section viewport, I'd select Edit Crop. Take me into here, and essentially what you want to do with a crop object is any 2D shape. And the moment you put a 2D shape down, there's no shapes here at the moment. I'm hitting Control A, which for me is Select All. And you can see that I'm not getting any objects appearing here. So there's nothing drawn yet here. This is all deselectable because I'm in the crop mode. The moment that I draw this rectangle though, and I'm going to draw it across here, and I'm going to leave some of that wall out. Anything that's inside this rectangle will be accepted as crop. Anything that's not inside this rectangle won't be accepted. So the moment I click Exit to see what happens to this back wall here, exit the crop, it's going to have a little think about that because it is a section viewport, but it shouldn't really matter because we've already rendered all of the interior components, and you can see it's cropped that back wall out. It's no longer there. So that's really handy. It can be any 2D object, as I said. Jumping back in here, I can do an addition if I like, so I might get a circle, I might place that into here, and I'm just going to do a basic cut as we've done before. I click the surface, so now I've got this shape here. It's a 2D object once again. I'm going to exit the viewport, and hopefully it'll cut out that section as well. There we go. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to you in terms of cropping things. There are times that you will need to use it if you don't want your flybars to go too far over, or if you don't want to show part of the seating bank or something like that on your plan. That's the time to use it. You can also have that crop object drawn when you're creating the viewport as well. It's a little bit trickier now in 2012, so this makes it a lot easier. So this episode's getting quite long. What I'm going to do is actually break up this episode and the next part of 4A, so it'll actually be 4B for the next one, which we'll discuss rendering. Obviously we've quickly talked about it here, but things like textures, image props, all that kind of stuff, hopefully we'll get to in the next one. Hopefully though that clears up most of your queries about this. I know it's been a very quick run through on this. There's a lot of options here though as well, and if you just need to have a play, that's fine. Just remember the things about the DPI, the printing, all the common mistakes that people make, and hopefully you can just jump back to this video and go, James did say something about always jumping into annotations for this, or always setting your print to ISO A1 or something like that. And once again, just printing outputs, it's all about playing, getting familiar with the printer. I'm really good at printing to A4 on here, but A4 is pretty much useless in the theatre world. You need to go A3 at the very minimum, or A1 if you're going all the way. So hopefully that'll inform you. Good luck for the next lesson.